tonight on CBC Vancouver News. An apology from Canadian Airlines.
We failed to deliver to the level we had expected to.
Why travelers who felt abandoned in the holiday chaos say it's not good enough. Plus, another major mill closure in BC with a crisis emerging.
One of the fundamental problems is that we're running out of timber.
The demands on the province to do something fast. And how forensic suspect sketches are evolving into the future.
They actually go through a catalog of faces and start picking out, eyes, eyebrows, nose that they think match that.
Behind the scenes with the people who use their art to help solve crimes.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. Several airlines are offering their apologies to the Canadian public today, saying their service over the holiday season was unacceptable. The comments come as part of a hearing held in Ottawa today. And as Ashley Burke tells us, two of the loudest MPs in the room hail from BC.
Get us home! Get us home! In December, Sunwing passengers were stranded for days in Mexico, fed up to learn that just before midnight, their flight was canceled yet again. It's just one of the chaotic scenes from this holiday travel season that airlines today had to answer for.
The bottom line is, we know we could have done better.
Sunwing, Air Canada, and WestJet all questioned by MPs about how they could have gotten it so wrong.
When is it ever acceptable that we have passengers sitting on aircraft for up to 12 hours, and in some circumstances over 12 hours?
That was unacceptable in many, many levels.
The airlines blame bad weather and address complaints they kept people in the dark.
Our guest communication was lacking, so we're going to do a better job of that.
In total, WestJet said it canceled 1,600 flights over the holidays. Sunwing canceled 67, including suspending all service from Saskatchewan.
How did you possibly book travel for Canadians when you did not have crews or planes lined up to service them? This is a catastrophic failure.
In the midst of the storm, with the inability to position, with the inability to recover from the various locations, duty day limitations, we failed to deliver to the level we had expected to.
That response not enough for some travelers who say they felt abandoned.
No, it's certainly not enough. Being demoralized and not answered to, and actually verbally assaulted, and communication breakdown completely to the point where it was impossible to get a hold of anybody. That's completely unacceptable for any business.
The Minister of Transport also questioned by the opposition about why he isn't doing more to protect passengers' rights, including compensation.
The air passenger protection regime that you've created has massive loopholes in it. You could fly a 747 through these things, and we see airlines clearly exploiting those loopholes in order to avoid paying passengers the compensation that they're due.
The regime is quite strong. I know you've had experts tell you that it was stronger, much stronger than the U.S. regime.
Sunwing confirms it's now dealing with 7,000 complaints tied to the holiday travel, and that includes requests for compensation or refunds after some people say they had to pay out of pocket to find their own way home. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
YVR, meanwhile, is also pledging to do better after it saw thousands of travelers stranded and hundreds of flights canceled or delayed close to Christmas. Like the airlines, Vancouver Airport Authority President Tamara Vrooman is blaming the disruptions on extreme weather, saying again that while the airport was prepared for the storm, more snow fell faster than expected. Airport operations were brought to a complete halt December 20th during what is typically the busiest travel week of the year.
And I was on the floor with passengers day and night, and I heard many of them that just simply didn't have the information they needed to make an informed decision. I think we as an airport community, airlines, airports, ground handlers, ground transportation, we can do a better job of communicating proactively so people can make an informed decision.
The airport says it plans to overhaul its weather forecasting and communications coordination. A review of the holiday chaos will be launched next week, and members of the public will be able to give input. Well, it's a cash infusion designed to protect renters. The BC government is creating a $500 million fund to enable nonprofits to buy older rental stock. As Mira Baines reports, the goal is to protect affordable housing, but critics say it's not enough money to make a big impact.
It's a move to insulate tenants from the ever-rising rents across BC. BC's premier says it's one solution to the growing problem of affordability, a move to protect renters from big business.
Increasingly, we're seeing activity across Canada and in British Columbia of large international corporations buying up rental buildings, speculating to earn investment income on homes that people count on affordable rents.
The Rental Protection Fund will give nonprofit housing organizations one-time grants so they can buy affordable rental buildings. Key nonprofit organizations are tapped to help with the plan.
It'll be managed by this external group of our not-for-profit partners with strong expertise in this sector.
They include the Aboriginal Housing Management Association, the BC Nonprofit Housing Association, and the Cooperative Housing Federation of BC. Some critics are questioning how far the $500 million fund will go. A community land trust was able to buy this Burnaby housing co-op to protect seniors and low-income renters, but it cost about $130 million. Still, experts say the fund can be used creatively.
There may be a contribution that brings the cost down, and then the nonprofit purchasing the building will have a mortgage, and that mortgage will be paid back over time through the stream of rental income.
The BC Liberals question whether relying on sellers and goodwill to buy properties is a reliable strategy.
The Premier suggested that there are a number of sellers that would give preferential treatment to those buildings that would remain as rentals, but we can't guarantee that.
She says there may be money available for the purchase of an older building, but is concerned about costs to maintain them.
There doesn't seem to be a mechanism for assisting in helping to cover those ongoing maintenance costs.
The Rental Protection Fund is expected to be operational in the coming months.
The idea behind this initiative is breathtakingly simple. If you want to protect a scarce and valuable asset, put it somewhere safe.
The province is also looking at legislation on bidding rules to allow nonprofits first refusal for building purchases. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
A 7-year-old girl is in hospital with serious injuries after being hit by a car last night. Police say both speed and alcohol are factors in the investigation. The child was crossing a street in West Vancouver with her family when a vehicle traveling down Marine Drive hit her. The 20-year-old driver stayed on scene and is cooperating with police. The RCMP's Collision Investigation Unit was called in to look at the crash. Anyone who witnessed the event is asked to call West Vancouver Police. A family of 3 people found dead inside a Surrey home earlier this week is asking for privacy. This comes after the Integrated Homicide Investigation Team identified them publicly. On January 9th, RCMP discovered 3 bodies inside a home in the Fraser Heights neighborhood. The IHIT investigation into the cause of death is ongoing, but family and friends are asking media and the public to respect their privacy and refrain from sharing personal information and photos. RCMP have made an arrest in a break-in this past weekend at a UBC residence. Hundreds of keys and cards were allegedly stolen from the Thunderbird residence, which houses up to 634 students in condo-style apartments. The university student body says stolen items included keys to unit doors and contract cards, which contain students' personal information. University RCMP says it has arrested a man in his 30s who is not a UBC student.
So my 2 main concerns were, one, that, someone could come into my bedroom with a key, and this is something that is a concern for, I think, over 600 students that are affected by this. And my second concern is also identity theft. We had, enough personal information to open a bank account, and then some that was stolen.
Some of the items were recovered during the arrest, and all the door locks were changed. University RCMP say the suspect has been released from custody. An update now on the trial of Dr. Albert de Villiers, who is formerly known as the top doc at Interior Health. He's been accused of sexually abusing a child. Now, the trial started Tuesday in Grand Prairie. The court heard from the 11-year-old boy that his family became friends with de Villiers back in 2018. De Villiers acknowledged that he developed a close relationship with the child and overstepped, but on the stand, he denied sexually abusing the child. He faces 3 additional charges from a different underage complainant. Well, if you're a smartwatch user still hitting the slopes this winter, you might want to check your watch settings before you go. Kelowna RCMP have recently responded to 6 false 911 calls from smartwatches. They were all unintentional. Smartwatches have an SOS function that reacts to a wearer falling by contacting emergency services, and falling is, of course, a routine part of skiing and snowboarding. Police are asking smartwatch users to turn off the fall detection function when on the ski hills or participating in other high-impact sporting activities. Forestry giant Canfor is permanently closing the pulp line at one of its Prince George mills, cutting 300 jobs in the process. The cut is the latest in a series of mill closures, and the province has promised to reform the sector. But Michelle Gassoub reports experts and critics warn with timber now in short supply, time is running out.
300 jobs lost in Prince George, only the latest in a series of cuts for Canfor. Just last week, the company said weak economic conditions and a lack of available fibre meant more curtailments across BC, affecting workers in Prince George, Chetwynd, Vanderhoof and Houston. And experts warn more cuts could be coming.
It probably differs from mill to mill for the actual reasons. One of the fundamental problems is that we're running out of timber.
So how did we get here? The destructive pine beetle infestation gave license for mass cutting to stop the spread. That, combined with some of the worst wildfire seasons on record, has led to a permanent contraction of BC's forestry sector.
We do have a shortage of timber and feedstock, so we need to get more jobs out of the trees that we do have, and that will only come through innovation and using materials wisely.
But creating jobs while mills are facing closures will be an uphill battle for the province, which is focusing on getting more value out of forests by reducing cheap exports in favor of what they call value-added products.
With the value-added industry, they need to have lumber at a price that they can then have a product that they can sell in a competitive environment. So the question is whether or not they can do that with the current economics that are operating within the forests.
Some have raised the alarm that clear-cutting and exporting raw lumber at the current rate is unsustainable as the sector continues to feel the effects of climate change.
I think anybody that thinks otherwise is fooling themselves. Anybody that thinks there's magic wood out in the forests of British Columbia that you can just go and harvest and bring in and solve all the problems.
The province now deploying a crisis response team to Prince George and promising $185 million in supports for workers affected by cuts across the sector. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
Now, a chemical used in the processing of pulp and paper is causing concern for marine mammals off our coast. 4NP is found in toilet paper and soap, and now it's showing up in whale carcasses found here. There have been some of it found in the bodies of dozens of whales along BC's coasts. Scientists from UBC, the Ministry of Agriculture and Oceans Canada, tested the tissue and found 4NP accounted for 46% of total pollutants identified. According to researchers, 4NP can affect reproduction and growth in mammals.
We know that the southern resident are a small population that are endangered, right? So question linger in the long-term survival. And this is kind of contaminant burdens that we are observing here. It's just part of a much bigger problem that include other kind of multi-stressors factors like climate change, the availability of Chinook salmon, which is the main prey item for the killer, the southern resident killer whale.
4NP can leak into the ocean through sewage treatment plants. Well, it's a success story that sparked conversations about public space in municipalities across the Lower Mainland. Yesterday, we told you how North Vancouver's Shipyards District has become one of our region's most popular. But did you know other waterfronts in the area are also looking to expand? I personally did not, and so this is why we have our Justin McElroy to fill us in.
When North Vancouver Mayor Linda Buchanan talks with other politicians about their cities, the shipyards inevitably come up.
All the time. All the time.
The mix of event spaces and stores, ocean views and walking paths is something that other local leaders look at with admiration.
Mayor Johnson from New West, he's actually bringing his council here in the next little while for a visioning session. I'm going to be doing a tour for them.
For New Westminster's mayor, the reason for a field trip is obvious.
The shipyards gives us maybe something to shoot towards, because I cannot emphasize enough, it is an incredible piece of urban design.
New West has waterfront parks next to commercial outlets, but so do lots of communities, from Port Moody's Rocky Point Park to the North Shore's Deep Cove. But only the shipyards seem to combine the two in a truly dynamic way.
Pier Park is pretty good at being a bit of a passive use space where people can come and have a picnic and enjoy the view, or hang out with friends. But it's not really a gathering space as such.
And other municipalities have waterfront land that isn't doing much of anything.
This could be a primo public gathering space where we have opportunities for show stages and events and food truck festivals.
In Delta, there's a new plan for the Ladner area and a clear inspiration.
Obviously, that's a much larger site than what we have here, but that's a great example to lean to see if we can create our own version of the shipyards here in Ladner Village.
At the same time, there are local concerns of ruining a heritage area, with the nearby rezoning proposal already proving contentious.
Change is always hard when you're talking about redeveloping a space that people have grown up with, that people are accustomed to. So it's nice to be able to point to something that is better by all standards and say, we can have this too.
Of course, if it was easy, plenty of other municipalities would already have it. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Delta.
The rainstorms that have pummeled California this week have arrived in Vancouver. Environment Canada is estimating a total of 50 to 100 millimeters of rain before tomorrow. Some localized flooding is expected, and Vancouver Island could see strong winds causing power outages. Avalanche Canada is also saying the storm could worsen avalanche conditions, which are already the most dangerous in decades. The avalanche risk has now been raised to high for the coastal and island regions. There's a warning for backcountry users to think twice during the storm. The CBC's Claire Palmer has more from Nanaimo.
An already wet start to the new year in BC is rolling on without a break. A strong low brewing in the Pacific is set to bring a lot more rain to Vancouver Island. Some areas on the west coast of the island are forecasted to get up to 200 millimeters. That brings worries about flooding, especially from the Pentledge River in Comox. BC Hydro says it's tracking the storm closely and getting prepared.
If there's any risk of potential isolated flooding, we'll see if that happens tomorrow morning, but we will certainly be reducing flows from the dam, and we'll just see what happens downstream.
For some people on the island, it's enough already.
One of my thoughts on the rain, it can go away anytime, just like the snow. Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, it hasn't even let up at all.
For those without homes, it's even more challenging.
It really sucks. It's really hard to live outside with it like this, because it's like you go through clothes like crazy because you can't afford to dry it all. So every day, like, you have to be soaked just to like have to possibly get some dry clothes, hopefully to go to sleep in. And it's just like everybody kicks you out everywhere, so there's nowhere to go to keep dry. And if there is, you got to be sneaky, and it's like, it's just awful.
The storm's punch may also depend on any melt of the snowpack.
We're ready for it. We have our modeling. We're our forecaster is a hydrologist, so we'll manage through this.
Watson urges people to be extra careful around rivers, streams, and coastlines that are at higher levels. The rain is set to ease slightly on Friday, but won't really stop until Saturday afternoon. Claire Palmer, CBC News, Nanaimo.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe is here, and Johanna, let's literally dive a little deeper into all that rain that is coming.
Yeah, I think Claire really summed up how most of us feel with the people she spoke to, but the island definitely getting it worse. I want to show you the radar right now. You can see the heavier band sort of between Nanaimo through Port Alberni as we head along Highway 4. That's where we've already seen the most rain, I think over 80 millimeters, and we could be looking at double, if not more of that by the time we hit tomorrow morning. morning. Claire mentioned we'll still see that rain through tomorrow. As far as Metro Vancouver, we're still getting those bands moving in right now. It's lightening up at the moment, but we are not done with that rain coming in from the southwest. And if you're watching from Victoria or the Southern Gulf Islands, classic rain shadow. Not to say you haven't got any rain, but a lot less than the rest of the South Coast. And we do have those rainfall warnings in place for the west and east side of the island. 40 to 80 millimeters more. So that's on top of what you've already seen. And again, I think there are some bullseyes that might surpass the 200 millimeter mark when all is said and done on the island at higher elevations through tomorrow, especially with those snow levels so high. Sunshine Coast through Metro Vancouver, North Shore, West Van, Tri-Cities, 10 to 30 millimeters more. Howe Sound, you could be looking at more like 50 plus millimeters more. So it is not done yet, but things will ease tomorrow. This is that plume. As Anita mentioned, this was hitting central and southern California earlier this week. This low pressure system kind of shifted the path. So now we're getting the bullseye, giving California a bit of a break for the moment. But that is going to slide back down on California later this week and into early next week. Just wanted to show you those bullseyes. That white showing up around Tofino, that's the 100 millimeter more bullseye. So not out of the question. We could still be looking at double. A lot of rain still for the North Shore. A lot less as we head down towards Richmond, Delta, White Rock. But Anita, it is still very much a soggy next 24 hours. We don't get much of a breath this weekend either, but I found some sunshine in the long range.
Okay, well, wait for it. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
A story now about forensic sketches. If you follow the news even a little bit, there's a pretty good chance that you're familiar. They're often used by police to help identify potential suspects or even missing persons when no video or photographs exist. The CBC's Anita Bathe is going behind the scenes tonight to see the process and how some artists are adapting to technology.
It's work that relies on memory, mugshots, and for a long time, pencil and paper. But now, this forensic sketch artist has gone digital, putting aside tools like these for this.
I get to draw and solve crimes at the same time. It's perfect.
And going digital has made investigating crimes simpler. He says it's easier to make changes on an iPad. Witnesses are less hesitant to ask for corrections, and that can help create more accurate sketches. But whether it's on paper or digital, the result can be difficult. Constable Mealings recalls a particular witness.
When I showed it to her, she just started crying because she just, that's the guy who's been, haunting her basically. That was, let me know that I did my job effectively. And yeah, I've had a couple other, like I said, recent successes that are still before the courts.
Mealings has been doing this work for 8 years, and to see the process, we described CBC reporter Justin McElroy.
We talk about lighting, how long they saw them, what was the most distinguishing feature of that person's face. They actually go through a catalog of faces and start picking out, eyes, eyebrows, nose that they think match that.
So you'd think because that I work with this person, I know what they look like, but there are so many features in this book, it is actually very difficult.
But not everyone is going digital. Some artists are sticking with pencil and paper. One forensic art trainer says most witnesses can only remember 4 to 5 facial features, which is why it's important to construct rough sketches.
If it's too photographic, then people aren't looking for someone who kind of looks like that. They're looking for that person.
But despite her reliance on old-fashioned sketching, she's still open to change, training students with iPads as well. And there are plenty of digital options out there. One piece of software is used to create drawings like this. Officers can access preloaded features rather than hand drawing them.
We hear from the agencies every so often, but they've been successful in homicide cases, serial rape cases, non-fatal shooting cases.
Tech, he says, can especially be used in remote communities as a quick solution. But a limitation is it can't draw side profiles just yet. Meanwhile, after about 2 hours, Mealings prepared a sketch, and we went over some corrections. And Justin eventually had a look.
It's not the worst.
From paper to screens, while the mediums may change, the artists agree that knowing the art of the human face and good communication with witnesses is key to help sketch each suspect and person that ends up on the bottom of their pencil. Anita Bathe, CBC News, Vancouver.
She always believes in achievement. If you try hard, you'll be number one.
She lived to the ripe age of 113. So, do we finally have an answer to the secret everyone's dying to know? Find out after the break. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream tonight. We want to know what would make getting a haircut easier. Is it having the shop come to you? Well, Halifax's mobile barbershop is buzzing around town. The service is helping people who may not otherwise be able to make it to a bricks-and-mortar shop.
My name is Mohammed Al-Nabil Sid. I'm from Syria. I'm coming to Canada 2019, the month May. Just cleaning stuff, yeah? Yeah. I opened mobile barbershop. Not all people is free. You have a time for cut the hair.
I think it's great experience, and it's a little bit more private. It's something different.
Every Wednesday, I'm get weekend for help the homeless people. After finishing the cut, he look in the mirror, he said, "This is not me. Thank you so much, thank you so much." The homeless people, Nabilsi Barbershop, he give him free haircut every Wednesday. I don't need money for that. Okay, what do you like?
They may be about a 1 on the sides and back.
Yeah.
I've never seen a barbershop that comes to their customers before. I was on my way to the hospital for a medical appointment, and I seen this truck. Accessible, on-the-go haircuts. And it was an idea that I've never seen anywhere else. And I thought it was very creative, and I think that a lot of people will be interested in this kind of a service.
This is good. If you need to open any business, is good for the guys. Maybe it's for 6 months, 7 months is hard for you, but after that it's good feeling. Haircut, head massage, hair color, beard trim. I have a wheelchair lift for disability people. If you need anything, you have here in this shop. I'm very happy. It's a good feeling.
At 113 years of age, the person thought to be Canada's oldest has died. Shige Mineshiba died on Friday in the Vancouver condo she shared with her daughter. Her longevity was just one facet of a life that has seen incredible change personally and in the world. And as one doctor says, it's part of a growing trend. More people are living to triple-digit ages. Liam Britton has his story.
In her 113 years, Shige Mineshiba witnessed wars, technological and social change, and the lives of countless family members begin and end. Still living in Vancouver is her daughter, 82-year-old Kyoko.
She always believed in achievement. Achievement, if you try hard, you'll be number one.
Shige was born on a farm near Nagoya, Japan in 1909.
There was 8 different type of fruit tree in her farmyard. Orange, peach, oh yeah, anything.
She finished high school and worked, including in insurance. She married, and she and her husband adopted baby Kyoko. Kyoko moved to Toronto in the late 1960s. Shige and her husband joined her on the move to Canada. Shige and Kyoko then moved to Vancouver. For the last 20 years or so, they've lived in this Mount Pleasant condo. Shige died there Friday. The death certificate lists advanced age as the cause. A number of newspapers and online resources say that at the time of her death, Shige was Canada's oldest person. Now, there's no official body that confirms this, but still, 113 years is no small feat. How is it that some people live this long? Dr. Roger Wong is an expert on geriatric medicine. He says genetics are part of the answer, but long-lived people tend to exercise, eat well, and have plenty of social outlets.
Healthcare professionals, what we try to work towards is helping, supporting individuals in the community to live not only for longer, but leading meaningful lives. And I think that is the important piece.
Kyoko says for her mom, an attitude of appreciation was important.
And she always thanked me. Arigato. When the community nurse comes in, she goes, arigato, arigato, and then she goes, that's a prayer.
And don't forget a cup of matcha tea every morning, not too hot.
See, it's not bitter.
No. Liam Britton, CBC News, Vancouver.
BC has become home to some of the oldest people in the country. And while Liam touched on it there, this story made me really curious to better understand the factors that go into such longevity. For insight, I'm joined live by Theodore Cosco, Associate Professor with the Department of Gerontology at SFU. Theodore, we heard there, talks of genetics playing a role. Can you elaborate on that? How exactly is it a factor?
Yeah, I think genetics, the genetic cards that you're dealt are one factor, absolutely. And it's also, I think, a really important piece that the genetic factors are one, but also the socioeconomic conditions that you're born into play a role as well. And it's really unique in the case of longevity because everybody is totally unique and you have years and years and decades of experiences and lifestyle that accumulate and contribute to longevity.
Are we seeing certain cultures around the world live longer, people from those cultures? I know some of them promote a more relaxed lifestyle. Maybe that factors in.
It could be. I think there's, as Dr. Wong pointed out, healthy diet, having greater physical activity and social connectedness are really important pieces. And it could be that there are different areas in the world that have just their diets are more conducive to being healthy, like a Mediterranean diet, for example. In Japan, they see lots of longevity as well. And also like societal norms with respect to physical activity, with respect to social connectedness. So I can imagine there's circumstances in which people have more of the norms are to have greater longevity fostering activities.
Yeah, I did a very basic Google search and everything that came up was that Japanese people around the world live the longest. Before we go, I want to touch on the fact that BC seems to keep having people who are the oldest in the country. What is it about this province, and is there any science to back it up?
So that's an interesting one because it could be a bit of a chicken egg situation, because if you look at, are these long-lived people that have been born and grown up in BC, or is it people that are self-selecting into living into BC? So for example, it could be that people that like to engage in a lot of physical activity specifically move to BC when they retire so they can engage in these sort of longevity fostering activities. So it's difficult to unpack what the causal mechanism is, but I think in terms of BC being a great place to grow old, it's excellent in terms of being able to engage in exercise, being able to eat a healthy diet, and also in terms of social connectedness. It's a really great place to grow old.
Theodore Cosco is an associate professor with the Department of Gerontology at SFU. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
They cannot fire all doctors in Russia.
Putting their careers on the line, how Russian doctors are advocating for a political prisoner being refused treatment after the break.
These people are desperate. They've tried traditional forms of therapy. Some have had bypass surgery, and some others have been told they need bypass surgery. Still others are here because they believe it will just make them feel better. What they're doing is getting chelation therapy. It's a controversial treatment where the drug ethylene diamine tetracetic acid, known as EDTA, is injected intravenously, and according to its proponents, it cleans out the arteries by attaching itself to elements like lead, calcium, and zinc in the blood and flushes them out of the system. Some people who are taking this treatment think it saved their lives.
It was bad enough that the family had got together and we'd already made my funeral arrangements. I mean, it was that close.
It's not all in my head, because pain is a very obvious thing that you remember from time to time.
Wally Garrett is part of a growing number of British Columbia residents who are making the trek to Bellingham, Washington to get chelation. He'd had a series of heart operations but seemed to be getting worse.
There was a point where I could walk for 1 block, and then my legs were severely sore. I couldn't continue any farther. If I did, I'd fall in a heap. After chelation, I'm able to walk 3 to 5 miles.
Chelation therapy is accepted as a treatment for lead poisoning, but it's not accepted by the medical establishment as a means of cleaning the arteries. They need proof from scientific studies.
If it was wonderful and miraculous, it certainly will not stay hidden for long and will be accepted.
Even medical practitioners who do use it admit they don't know how it works. They claim it cleans the arteries and so improves blood flow.
How it is improving blood flow, we're not sure. We don't know if it's because it's removing low levels of lead or calcium or nickel or exactly why. But, and that is part of the controversy.
But for BC's Ken Jones, how it works or why doesn't matter. He was told he'd have to wait up to 8 months for a triple bypass after he'd had a heart attack, so he tried chelation therapy.
Well, it means I can play golf now, and I can walk 5 miles a day, which I couldn't do before. So I feel that it certainly helped me.
But the Canadian Cardiovascular Society is concerned. Its position is that there's no scientific evidence of benefit from chelation therapy, and in fact it warns against the possibility of toxicity. So until there's evidence supporting chelation, the controversy continues as to whether it's a modern miracle or a false hope. Leila Paul, CBC News.
A Saskatchewan First Nation has discovered remains at the site of a former residential school. Even more disturbing, 2,000 anomalies were also noted. Although, as the CBC's Adam Hunter tells us, this is only the first phase of the search.
Our hearts are heavy today. This has been a very emotional journey for all of us.
In November 2021, the Star Blanket Cree Nation began ground-penetrating radar search at the site of the former Lebret Indian Industrial School, about 75 kilometers northeast of Regina. Last fall, one team member made a disturbing discovery.
It is a jaw bone fragment of a child between the ages of 4 and 6. The bone fragment has been aged to be about 125 years old, which puts us in the first school era. So that brings us back to about 1898.
The remains of the child were in a teal box in front of Star Blanket Chief Michael Starr.
This discovery has changed everything. It's changed the things that we're going to do. It's changed our mindset. It's changed our way of life in a way.
The first phase of the search returned 2,000 anomalies, but an anomaly is not considered an unmarked grave site. It could be something else in the ground.
This site and many other sites are crime scenes. Those are crime scenes that must be addressed immediately.
The news conference took place in the school's gymnasium, the only building left from the former school, which closed in 1998, making it one of the last residential schools to do so in the province. The original school was built in 1884. It burned down in 1904. A second school burned in 1932.
We were taken away from our parents, but we learned how to survive. We learned how to forgive. They tried to take our spirits away. They tried to take the Indian out of us, but thank the Creator, we're back here, strong as we'll ever be.
Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations Chief Bobby Cameron is calling on the federal government to build healing centers in communities where there were residential schools. As for the search, the team says it will now start conducting core sampling to run DNA tests to determine if any of the anomalies are graves. Adam Hunter, CBC News, on the Star Blanket, Cree Nation.
Russia has a new top military commander in the war in Ukraine, but little has changed on the ground in the fierce fight to capture the town of Soledar in the east. As Chris Brown reports, both sides are describing some of the deadliest battles on the ground so far.
The battles in and around Soledar are among the bloodiest of Russia's 11-month war on Ukraine. Here, Russian soldiers seek cover, but with the help of a drone, Ukrainian fighters take them out. The Ukrainians have suffered extreme casualties too, though. This daring rescue mission, dashing across contested land, got some of the injured out. The situation is difficult but stable, says this soldier, who insisted Ukraine has not fully conceded the town. The Russians are moving over their own corpses, said Ukraine's deputy defense minister. Despite the carnage, Russians are still pushing the attack to capture Soledar and its salt mines. Most of them Wagner mercenaries led by Yevgeny Prigozhin, a longtime crony of Vladimir Putin who, unlike Putin, is often seen near the battlefield. Prigozhin may be trying to turn a victory here into more power and leverage for himself. Russia's weakened army has not been involved much in this battle, and indeed, Putin just switched his top military commanders in Ukraine. Valery Gerasimov helped plan the initial invasion, which has had a string of commanders since. His predecessor lasted just 3 months.
Both sides are trying to prevent.
This former Ukrainian colonel says Russia wants to stop a new Ukrainian offensive, and Ukraine wants to head off the arrival of 150,000 newly mobilized Russian recruits.
We expect that probably in a matter of a couple of weeks, and they will try to deploy these troops better equipped, better trained on the front line to, as I said, to regain the initiative. So our objective is to prevent it from happening.
And Ukraine is set to receive advanced tanks and other armored vehicles from the West, an indication it's preparing to take the fight beyond Soledar and Bakhmut. Chris Brown, CBC News, Kyiv.
And in an open show of defiance, hundreds of Russian doctors are demanding urgent medical care for a prominent critic of the Kremlin. Alexei Navalny has been repeatedly jailed for challenging Russian President Vladimir Putin. As Briar Stewart reports, he's serving a lengthy sentence that was imposed last March, and his wife says he's now seriously ill.
Dr. Alexander Vanyukov and his family left Russia because of the war. But for months, he's been watching as his country's highest profile political prisoner turns up to court, increasingly gaunt and frail.
So he looks skinny with a black shadow under eyes, and nobody could be healthier with this condition.
Alexei Navalny is frequently in solitary confinement. After his lawyer reported that he had a temperature and was being denied medicine, Vanyukov and other doctors felt they needed to write an open letter.
Maybe it could save Navalny's life. Maybe not, but we're just trying.
They called on Russia's President Vladimir Putin for an end to the abuse of Alexei Navalny, demanding that he be seen by civilian doctors. The letter was signed by more than 600 doctors, most of whom are still in Russia and putting themselves and their careers at risk.
Many people are afraid.
Dr. Alexander Pollutants says some of his colleagues were too fearful to add their names.
Then more people sign, then less is personal risk for each of us, because they cannot fire all doctors in Russia.
Pollutants was one of the doctors who helped to treat Navalny back in 2020 when he was poisoned with a nerve agent and eventually transported to Germany for medical care. After returning to Russia, he was sentenced to years in prison for contempt of court and fraud. Today, his anti-corruption foundation released an audio tape from court. where he asks the judge why is it that every time getting even the most basic medication turns into an epic quest. Navalny's lawyer believes the doctor's letter helped because his client is now receiving antibiotics. All of his court appearances have been postponed for the rest of the week. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
It's just so unbelievably out there.
Coming up after the break, how two fraudsters stole an entire home by posing as renters. Northern California is dealing with more rain and snow, which is wreaking havoc on the state.
All right.
The snow is making driving conditions hard. It's so high in some parts that it's nearly buried traffic signs. The Sierra region is expected to see more than 4 feet of snow over the holiday weekend there. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe is here. I know you've been tracking that storm. You're going to tell me that it's normal, but I was pretty shocked, I guess, to hear that there's so much snow there.
Well, it's been a few years, Anita. They've been in an excessive drought in this part of California for 4 years when we're at that excessive level and possibly more. So the fact that we've replenished that drought in parts of the California mountains in such a short time is pretty remarkable. Here's a look at the radar right now. Parts of that snowpack in the Sierra Mountains now 200% of normal, and they were going in at drought conditions. And this mountain range does supply California with a third of their water supply, so crucial to get that back. There's always two sides to the atmospheric weather coin, and the radar is showing the rain back in Northern California. It'll swing into Central and Southern California later this week. And I forgot to put a radar legend on, but I am wearing the color coding of the heavy to light precip in case you needed to know. I've been looking at a few studies when it comes to what's been happening in California, and we are starting to see shadows of that in British Columbia. This is sort of since 2012, what we've been seeing in British Columbia, prolonged extreme drought conditions followed by extreme precipitation. That means we see a lot of grasses and fuels grow quickly in the summer. Then things dry out rapidly and we get a big wildfire season, and that leads to burn scars when the excessive precip comes back. So this is that cascading sequence of extreme weather events that we are starting to see in British Columbia. The droughts followed by the extreme precip, followed by the wildfire season. So starting to get some studies out of California really showing that is going to continue to happen more. We're seeing those warm temperatures along with the rain. 10 right now at YVR, 11 up towards West Van, a good 3 to 4 degrees above the seasonal mark. This is the low pressure system that's directing everything in the Pacific right now, and it's going to bring a little low pressure system back in for Saturday afternoon. So we've got that rain through most of Friday, bit of a breakthrough Saturday afternoon, and then Saturday night we'll get that rain back. So a couple more double-digit warm days. Again, easing rain tomorrow afternoon. Really won't end until Saturday afternoon. A dry Saturday afternoon if you were looking for a window to do things not wet. And then Monday afternoon, that's my best chance of actually seeing a few hours of sunshine. We may see some towards the middle and end of next week, Anita. A lot of people are asking if we should put the snow boots away yet. I'm going to say no. Too early.
Plot twist. Okay. We'll press you on that tomorrow or next week.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, it sounds like the plot of a movie, but it actually really happened. In Toronto, a family nearly had their entire house stolen after a fraud scheme. Now, if you're wondering how they almost got away with it, the CBC's Farah Morali explains.
I can't even form words to describe that moment at that time because it's just so unbelievably out there.
Melissa Walsh's reaction to stumbling across this. Photos of the home owned by her great-uncle on the MLS site for sale, though no one in the family had listed it.
The family asked us not to show the home's address to protect the elderly owner. The 95-year-old moved into a long-term care home, and the family hired a realtor to rent out the home to help cover expenses. The agent found tenants, a lease was signed, but it appears no one actually moved in. Instead, within a month, the home was staged and was listed for $1.29 million. It even received multiple offers. The family later learned the original tenants used bogus information to rent the home. Then, someone impersonated the owner to hire realtors to list the home. CBC News has learned this case is related to one Toronto police announced last week, where a home was actually sold without the owner's knowledge.
When we found out that this happened to another family, this wasn't just a one-time situation. We thought it was horrible.
The case didn't surprise this lawyer, who fought a landmark mortgage fraud case in 2006.
The reality is that when you consider how much a home is now worth in the GTA, this is a high-value crime.
Experts say fraudsters seem to target homes with no mortgages, removing a layer of bank oversight, as well as absentee homeowners or rentals, giving them access to the home and mail. Some are now calling for industry changes, where the common practice to list a home is to see one piece of government ID.
We need to train realtors and change the best practices that we employ. We need to be teaching realtors these websites that you can use to verify identities.
The agents involved were from different Royal LePage brokerages. The company maintains its agents followed all due protocol and had no reason to be suspicious. Not enough for Walsh's family, still in disbelief how their family home nearly slipped through their fingers. Farah Morali, CBC News, Toronto.
Gonna be dangerous with the mustache as well.
Cheers.
Cheers.
It's a tasty tour that's set to start this weekend. Up next, the Early Edition's Lisa Christensen takes us for a preview of the annual Hot Chocolate Festival.
For fashion writer Eva Fried, this street and Anthropology were once a fashion destination.
I love the atmosphere there, and it's just nice to browse even if you don't shop. And it fits my particular, it had a little bit of everything, home and fashion, beauty.
But now the shop will be the latest on a long list of retailers on this strip that have closed their doors.
Judith and Charles, which is a very fine Montreal fashion company. Diesel has been empty for years and years and years. It was a showcase flagship. Anthropology is closing, and All Saints just closed this summer.
Fried says this block has some particular issues leading to the closures.
The Holt Renfrew up on the corner of Sherbrooke has moved to St. Catherine, so the foot traffic has decreased.
It's upsetting. It's a loss for Montreal.
Shoppers in the downtown area are sad but admit their habits have changed.
I drive and come with my car, but it's complicated because I can't find a parking spot. And you always have to pay and everything, so.
Not really often, as I live in the suburbs, so it's kind of far.
Staff at Anthropology confirmed to me that the store will close its doors as of January 14th, meaning people that want to shop there will have to go to their location at Quartier d'Istrante in Brossard. One expert says suburban destinations like d'Istrante are part of the problem, along with online shopping.
But the pandemic has something to do with it, the recession, the increased interest rates. This all affects consumption, but retailing was affected even before then.
And once the city's light rail system is up and running, he says things could get worse.
People can jump on a train, be at Distante, and at Distante, you have theaters, you have cinemas, you have restaurants, you have doctor's office, you have shopping places like you wouldn't believe.
But some remain loyal to downtown.
I have parents who live in the area, and I'm used to coming downtown. I used to work downtown. I never get intimidated by coming downtown. I often find parking.
Staff at Anthropology hope the store isn't gone from Montreal for good, and that the brand could open another outlet on the island soon. Cubino Duro, CBC News, Montreal.
Land Back is a CBC original podcast where we uncover land theft in Canada and look at how Indigenous people are taking it all back. Land Back is out now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
A popular Vancouver cat cafe has gotten a new lease on its 9 lives after it managed to crowdfund more than $100,000 to avoid closure. Catoro Cafe passed the 6-figure goal on their online fundraiser earlier this morning, just 1 week after asking for help online. The East Broadway business has been struggling to bounce back from COVID, saying that debts they took on to care for their cats during that period could now force them to close. But caring cat owners from across Canada had a different plan.
The community just came together and really pulled through and showed that they want us to stay. And it's really great that we'll be able to continue our efforts in 2023.
Along with the feline friends you see here, the cafe employs roughly 20 people. The funds raised today will go towards the cafe's debts, as well as essentials like food and vet care for the kitties moving forward. Who can say no to those cute cats? Okay, well, if you think it's the season for a warm, rich drink, you're not alone. Vancouver's 13th annual Hot Chocolate Festival runs from January 14th to February 14th, and the early edition's Lisa Christensen takes us to Nelson the Seagull, one of this year's participants.
How long have you been involved in the Hot Chocolate Festival?
This will be our 4th year. It's a lot of fun. It kind of, January is generally a slower time of year, so it's great to get more people through the door with a bit of a promotion. And just a chance to be creative. It's lots of fun. It's called the Mooi Milk Tarts, which is South African for nice milk tarts. Milk tart's kind of like a classic South African treat, almost like a Portuguese custard, but less color. It's a classic South African dish, and so we've kind of turned it into a white chocolate hot chocolate, and we're going to be topping it with a bit of rooibos infused whipped cream. And we serve it with a little milk tart on the side. I think using real chocolate, for me personally, I kind of really love that, get a much better mouthfeel and taste. And this time of year, it's a great comfort drink when it's cold outside. That's going to be dangerous with the mustache as well.
Cheers.
Cheers. And yeah, absolutely, exactly what I thought.
Right in the mustache.
Right in the mustache.
I've never really thought about the mouthfeel of a hot chocolate, but okay, I'm game to test it out. You can't go wrong with a cup of hot chocolate, and white hot chocolate, even better. I can't wait to check that out. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News. Dan Burrett will be here tomorrow night for you. Good night.